Ladies and gentlemen, let's discuss Final Fantasy VII Remake, shall we? Along with a plethora of other games. There was a survey conducted by Sony in Japan, and they asked the gamers there, what games are your favourite, what games impacted you more than a novel or a movie, and finally, which game would you like to see remade with current technology? And some of those answers are going to surprise you, but the number one answer, which I'll reveal that now, Final Fantasy VII, probably will not surprise you. So what's your favourite PlayStation game of all time? I'm going to read out the top 5, and I'll link to the survey, of course, in the video description. Some of these will surprise you, some of these will not surprise you, but as I said, I'm just going to list out the top 5. Dragon's Quest V, then Final Fantasy VII, then Dragon's Quest VI, then Final Fantasy X. As I said, these are span over generations. And then Resident Evil came in at number 5. And they also had some ones that may surprise you a little bit, like Dynasty Warriors came in at, for example, number 18. And you also had, let's say, Tetris at number 10, which may surprise some gamers. Which game impressed you more than a movie or a novel? Final Fantasy X was number 1, then 7, then Resident Evil, then Dragon's Quest V. You can probably see a pattern that they really are interested in the Dragon's Quest series in Asia. Then the original Final Fantasy, and then you had Final Fantasy 9, and then 8. Then you had Dragon's Quest and a couple of others, and Ark's Quest, and another Dragon's Quest, and Metal Gear Solid 3. And so on and so on. 17 actually was quite a nice shout. Akami, which Amata on the channel continues to try to convince me of its amazingness. Now, the games that you remake using the latest technology, I'm not surprised about Final Fantasy VII being number 1. In fact, my exact words, and I pretty much actually said this on the RGT Facebook page, were no shit. Like, okay, people have been saying this for ages. But we'll discuss that in just a moment, because there are a couple of choices which really was like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. So we can read between the lines of latest technology, in other words, for the PS4, with an updated game engine, improved visuals, physics, and all of the other bits you'd expect, right? Now, Dragon's Quest VIII, which is Journey of the Cursed King, was number 2. I honestly haven't played any Dragon's Quests. I don't know why, I just haven't. But Resident Evil was number 3, and that really surprised me. There's 2 reasons. 1, we've already had it on the GameCube, and 2, it's coming out on the PS4 anyway. So it's like, kind of surprised by that one. The remake on the PS4 is the kind of port, if you will, the upscale port that was released on the GameCube. And that's actually a really nice version of the game, just saying. Then you had Final Fantasy at number 4. Then you have Gran Turismo 6, which I wouldn't have called in a million years, to be totally honest. Then you had Dragon's Quest V. This one freaked me out, Resident Evil 6, considering it was basically considered to be the evil. Literally the evil for all of the wrong reasons of the Resident Evil series, but it's generally considered, at least in my circle of people I know, the worst by quite some way. Then you had Dragon's Quest, a couple of others, Ark the Lad, Final Fantasy 9, Monster Truck, Final Fantasy 10, which has had a remake, well, remaster, but I suppose in this regard they are literally referring to completely and utterly remade from the ground up. Xenogears, which is a pretty cool game, Worldwide Winning Soccer, Final Fantasy 8, Dragon's Quest 7, Final Fantasy, which is, I believe, spelt wrong, if at least in the list I'm looking at. Maybe it'll be updated. Yes, it's spelt wrong. It's got, it's actually spelled Fantasy 7 International, which is obviously the international release, where the original Japanese release didn't have some of the stuff that the EU release had. And then Gran Turismo came in at number 20. So that's a pretty odd list in my personal opinion. Now, the primary reason that I'm making the video is the Final Fantasy, so I want to discuss that first. FF7 has been rumoured for a re-release at, well, since even the PS3, right? And we've seen it, we've heard about it, it's been discussed, there's been teasers, there's been rumours, and I think everyone has wanted it. There's been even a couple of hoaxes of the bloody thing at this point. But it's not materialised. And people are like, well, why? Now, I've got a couple of feelings as to why, as well as some stuff that apparently developers have said behind closed doors. And these are concerns. Now, I don't know how true this is, but I could kind of see it. One of the reasons is because, quite simply put, it's very expensive to make. And this is particularly true when you consider the huge, massive world that is Final Fantasy VII. Because if they just gave us the world of Final Fantasy VII with exactly the same towns and stuff, we'd probably say, well, this is a bit sparsely populated, my friends. You know, we'd expect maybe a little bit more on the world map, that type of thing. And that would be a valid concern, and it would also increase the cost. Plus, imagine all of those areas, all of the cutscenes, everything. It would cost a lot. Now, a lot of the cutscenes now could probably be done in engine, but that would also lead to some questions of how would people like that. The other problem, voices. Now, I realised in Advent Children there were voices, and in my personal opinion, I thought that all of the characters sounded pretty much perfect. I would say that maybe there was one or two slight weaknesses. But, you know, overall, I thought the voice acting, Japanese voice acting, I can't really comment on because I don't really understand Japanese apart from a few words here and there. But from what I did understand and from the general sound of the voices, it sounded pretty good. Obviously, I can comment on the English voices, and, you know, the actors did a pretty good job. They weren't crap, which is, you know, nice, because anime and animated movies are very much hit and miss, at least in my experience. It's either like, well, this pretty much nails the character, or, oh my sweet Jesus, this sounds like a 60s martial arts movie dub. But, my personal opinion, they did a pretty good job. So I wouldn't mind voice acting, and to be honest with you, I think just text would be a problem, but it would, of course, increase the cost. The other problem, and this is probably one of the big ones, is what would they do regarding the storyline. Now, you might not know this, but early on in the game, well, actually, on the first disc, spoilers, if you haven't actually completed Final Fantasy, although you probably know this by now anyway, as you might know, Ares dies in the game, right? But you can get her hidden weapon, sorry, her special weapon, which name eludes me, and you can also get her special limit break, her final limit break, known as Great Gospel. Now, when I originally did this, back when I was really madly into the game, not the PS1 was kind of like the thing, I'd always wondered why you could do that, right? Why you could get this bloody limit break and her special weapon, stuff like that, but then she dies, she falls over, literally not that long after. I don't know how many hours, I suppose it depends on what you're doing, but she falls over pretty quick. And I'd always wondered that. And I decided, just out of random curiosity, to do a bit of research on the subject, and just find out, you know, what's going on, really. And basically what I'd found out is that originally there were rumours that you would actually be able to revive Ares. In other words, there were remnants in the game, including a start of a quest where you can actually revive her. Now, supposedly, the game had been created with the ability to revive her in mind. This is the story I've heard anyway. But they basically decided to cut it last minute. I've heard a couple of reasons for this. One, they decided, well, it doesn't really fit the direction, but the primary one that I've heard is because they just didn't have enough time. Now, I'm not saying that this is the case, but this is what I've kind of heard through the grapevine. So, if they were to do this, the question is, would they actually allow you to be able to revive her? Now, personally, I think it would be kind of nice if it was, but it wasn't the canon ending. So, in other words, you could do it, but canon-wise, and this is, for example, the same as Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, right? So, with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, you can go ahead and you can defeat Darth Malak and all of these guys, and then you can become the Sith Lord. Not that I'd ever do such a thing. But, anyway, the canon ending, the one that, of course, everyone knows, is that, well, you know, Revan actually was a good guy, and or good woman. Canon-wise, I believe Revan is a male. Yeah, actually he is. So, canon-wise, Revan is a male, and he did help, basically, fight against the Sith. That's the canon. So, I personally would like that. I think that would be kind of awesome, personally speaking. But I don't really think that it's a surprise that the ability, you know, the whole idea of a remake. The other problem, despite the fact that this is a Sony-orientated survey, I would be personally really surprised if it was exclusive to PlayStation. Now, I know that's probably going to piss some people off, but I don't think it would be, because the bottom line is Sony are not in a good financial position right now. They're simply not. I mean, the rumour that I'm hearing, and you've probably heard it anyways, they're stopping sponsorship for FIFA because basically they don't think it's giving them a good return on investment for the money they're putting in. In other words, they think it's costing them too much money. And we know that they're losing cash right now, which means it would be quite prohibitively expensive for them to put out the amount of cash it would likely cost them to make this game exclusive, because this game would be extremely expensive to remake. It would also be rather a risk for Squaresoft, because obviously if they put this amount of work in, it would obviously take them several years to make it, assuming it's not already in development. For all we know it is. For all we know it's 85% along, because obviously we're not kind of privy to what they're doing in the background. But I personally think it will be on the Xbox One if it is a real thing and it is coming out, and it wouldn't surprise me at all. Hopefully it would also be out on the PC, because that would make me pretty happy. And Final Fantasy VII actually did get a PC release. There were some problems with it, to say the least. I believe most of them are audio orientated. I think there were some problems. This is back when PC configurations and stuff were, well, let's say not easy. Not like today, where like 95% of games work just by launching the XT. You don't even really need to worry about a day one patch. Obviously day one patches help, but back then it was a real pain in the butt, and you had so many different configuration problems, and the APIs were pretty crap, and driver issues, and Sound Blaster compatibility. Oh god, it was awful back then at some points. It was still kind of awesome. It kind of got a bit easier, of course, when DirectX became more of a thing, but before that, when DX wasn't really the main way to play games, especially like kind of late DOS era, Windows 95, that type of thing, it was kind of a pain. And Final Fantasy, of course, was released when there were still sound configuration issues. Anyway, I've kind of gave you a couple of rumours concerning this. Now, I personally would like to see a remake, personally, but I would like it done correctly. And this is something that I think Square are very... Because this isn't like a HD. They can't just HD it. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, why not? But because it just wouldn't sell enough, in my personal opinion. They would really have to remake a lot of the stuff, because the cutscenes alone, and I don't know this for 100%, but I imagine that the cutscenes alone are not made in HD quality. They were not rendered in HD, so they would have been made at like 320 by 240 or whatever it was rendered in. And so a lot of that would have to be redone for a remake if they were to just HD the whole thing. And of course there is Final Fantasy available on PSN anyway, so it would really have to be that they re-rendered a lot of stuff, and it would take a lot of cash, at least in my personal opinion. But I would really love to see it remade. Not exactly, maybe slightly change the art style, but keep the semblance of the art style involved, because I quite liked it. I mean, one of the reasons, of course, they went for the art style they did was to help cut down on the polygon count. So what I've heard anyway, and obviously you've got the pre-rendered backgrounds, but obviously they went a completely different direction for Final Fantasy VIII. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. It's been a bit rambling. I've given you some rumours, but take care and bye for now.